And thank you very much, Rakesh. Thanks for inviting me today to just let everybody know that I scheduled today's talk just based on the forecast. I knew a long time ago that we would actually have a 20-degree day today just to get you all pumped up for spring. And indeed, spring is here, and spring is, well, the calendar says it's spring. We still have some cooler weather ahead, but now's a great time for us to start planning for spring. And I know that we have many young and future gardeners that are out there. And first off, what we're going to talk about is the reasons why this year I want you to kind of venture in to growing your own food. And the reason why I think you should grow your own food is, number one, kids, you know, when you look at a tomato, you're going to say to yourself, I know what energy went in to make this tomato. How I saw that seed, I watched it grow, I watched it go to a period where it's going to flower. And then after I saw bees fly around and pollinate those flowers to set the fruit, then all of a sudden I have the ability to enjoy a tomato, put it on a sandwich, put it in a salad, or even put it in a sauce, or better yet, pizza. I had pizza tonight. Love pizza. There's always a reason for pizza. So number one, growing your own food. It's about getting to know where food comes from and to really value food. Number two, the reason why we would grow our own food is to know where our food comes from in terms of nutritional. That way we know how it was grown, and we know if we want to grow organic, we can grow organic as well. Number three, we can save some money. And even if we grow a little extra food, what we can do is look for some of the local food banks in the area and maybe even donate some of that food. There's a program out there which is called Grow a Row, Plant a Row. Plant a Row, that is. Plant a row, share a row, and that there is about donating a row, an extra row of food of your vegetable garden. Next up, those are some of the reasons why you should grow your own food. In terms of growing your own food, where can you do it? Well, you can do it on patios, you can do it in gardens, you can do it on elevated spaces. There's many places right now. There's a grocery store in Montreal right now that's actually growing food right on top of the grocery store and then serving that food. Food as well, if you have enough light, can even be grown inside factories because now they're doing vertical farms to help grow food. But the key is, that's why I wore today, is to make sure that we have this. It's sun. In order to grow your own food, you need a location that's got some sun. You need an afternoon light. You need at least 6 hours of afternoon light. So kids, if you go out on your property and there's a space that in the afternoon, it feels hot, it feels sunny, that would be probably one of the better places to grow food. But if you have a property that's a little bit too shady, a little bit too dark, you're gonna struggle to grow food. So you need to have light. So sun is the key to successful food growing gardens. So once we identify that we have some sun, the next thing that you can do is you could sit down with your parents, and parents, you can sit down with your kids and try to decide what you want to grow to eat. And you got some packets of seeds, you got some soil, we're going to talk about that in a second, and you have some of your egg cartons in different containers that we can start some seeds. But we can then go and say to our parents, you know, I love eating beans. So you write down, maybe we should grow beans. I love eating corn. So you go down. And I want the kids to give you a little bit of a list of items that they want to grow, that they like eating. And then one item, kids, one item I want you to pick that maybe you kind of like, I don't know if I like it. And I want you to try to grow it for 1 year. So let's say that an item like that, a lot of kids have never tried a radish. So this is radish seeds, and radishes, these guys here are really quick to harvest. They're it's almost like a hot taste. They're kind of a unique taste overall, but one of the first things that you can do in your garden. So first thing that you're going to do is, after you figure out you got sun, is to make a list of items that you want to grow. And from that list of items that you want to grow, then we can start planning that vegetable garden in terms of how big we're going to make it. If you're a first-time gardener for this year, I'd really encourage you to make a space no bigger than 4 by 8 feet. That's a good starting space, or even just start some containers. You can grow food in pots. I grow a lot of my own vegetables in what are called stock troughs. So they're the same troughs that horses and cattle will drink their water out of. And if you want to know more about the stock troughs, this is shameless self-promotion, I do have a book which is called Food to Grow, and I also have some pictures of the stock troughs inside Food to Grow as well. So we can grow food anywhere. Hey, random fact, by the way, strawberries. You know, strawberries indeed a fruit, but did you know strawberries, what makes this an interesting fruit is its seeds are on the outside. So you can tell your friends that after. You can say, look, tomatoes, the seeds are in the inside. Strawberries, the seeds are on the outside. The difference between a vegetable and a fruit, if something goes to flower and then forms, and then there's seeds, that's basically a fruit. So leaf lettuce and lettuces and things like that are a vegetable because they don't flower. So anything that doesn't flower, but they will flower over time after a period of time. So back to that. So we got sun, we're figuring out what we want to grow. And now is the time when we're like, okay, let's get gardening. And today you're saying to your parents, you know, we should do it. We should be planting outside. No, we still got something called frost. And so frost is, we call it Jack Frost. So Jack Frost has the ability to come still see us. And on Friday night, we have an overnight low of -2. Tomorrow, daytime highs to 12 degrees. You guys are going to get some thunderstorms after about 10 p.m. tonight. Into tomorrow, some morning showers into the afternoon, clearing skies. The weekend looks a little cooler. There's a little quick forecast for you. So with frost, the reason why we can't start planting outdoors right now is that frost will drop the temperature below the freezing mark. And the neat thing about, let's say, our pepper, well, the plant of pepper and even the pepper itself, is these guys here are water. They're almost made up of water. So what happens is when they freeze, water, when it freezes, if you look at an ice cube tray inside your home, when water freezes, it expands. And then when it expands inside a plant, it actually breaks the cell wall and then causes that plant to die. So it's too cold. But now is the exciting time that we could start starting some seeds indoors. So say, for instance, this is probably the last week that we could start some tomato seeds indoors. And you guys have some tomato seeds that are there. Tomato seeds should be germinated and sown 6 to 8 weeks before last frost date. And our last time that Jack Frost is usually going to make an appearance in the general Toronto area for TMS is going to be generally around the 15th of May. So we're about 6 to 8 weeks still towards that last frost date. So we could start our tomato seeds. There are other seeds that are out there that when you buy your seeds, and be careful for this, and you guys could tell your parents this as well. So if we look at the onions and we look at the tomatoes, the radishes, forgive me, onions and radishes that are here, they are direct sow. And so the word sow, what the heck does the word sow? The word sow means I'm just taking a seed and I'm putting it in soil. That's what means sowing a seed. These guys here are direct sow, which means these we directly put outside. We don't even start them indoors. We'd put them right in the garden, right outside in later spring. So we're going to be doing that generally the end of May, beginning of, the end of April, beginning of May. So you can do that. Those are direct sow. So when you're looking at your seeds, you have direct sow, and then you have as well the ones that you sow indoors a little bit earlier on, like tomatoes. And also, if you want something super easy, so the reason why, in terms you're seeing in the seeds that you got some marigolds. And the reason why I gave you marigolds, so when we're growing vegetable plants, we're going to have a lot of fun during the summer season. As these things are growing, we get to see the seeds germinate. We get to see them flower. We get to all of a sudden start to harvest. But then also we get rabbits that come in and eat away. And then we get squirrels that jump in and they're going to steal some of our fruit and vegetable as well. We get birds that fly in. That's kind of cool. We get Mother Nature that interacts. Marigolds, if we plant the marigolds around the outside of our vegetable garden, the marigolds have a little bit of a pungent smell. And that pungent smell will actually deter things sometimes like rabbits from that area. The other cool thing is with marigolds, if you ever look at an egg and you look at when the egg cracks open and you wonder how some eggs have really, really vibrant yolks, often marigolds, the flower of the marigold, will be used in feeding many different chickens. And the reason why they're used to feed for chicken feed is to intensify the color of yolks. And that is no yolk. Let's start off by sowing. So you guys grab your marigold seeds that are right here now. And I want you to open your packet. And you know what I've done is you can see that we're going to do our lettuce later on in this little clamshell. And these are what you would normally have your strawberries in, or you would even have your salads in, which are almost like little greenhouses. I have an egg carton here where I've already pre-put some soil in. So if you guys got a chance, make sure that you put a little bit of soil and try not to be too messy. For the parents out there, what I do as a trick, just to keep the soil, you can see that I put it in a baking tray. So if you grab a baking tray, everybody, get your baking tray, and then when you fill all your soil up, then what's going to happen is it's going to stay in the baking tray and you don't have to vacuum as much. So I'll give you a little bit of time. So we can use eggshells, egg cartons, forgive me, to sow seeds in. We can use some of the different recycling items that we can find. We can even use a milk container, there's no problem. Or the trays that were provided for you as well, is you could fill up a tray with your seed starting soil. And with that, you can use that as well. So let you guys get away there and you've got your seeds and things like that. So what's really cool about the soil, so soil is the foundation to any garden that's out there. So in order for us to grow great plants, we have to make sure that it has a nice happy bottom. And a happy bottom is a root system. And we got to remember that the root system of a plant, and I'll grab just a different plant that's here. I got, this is one of my tropical plants. This is a ZZ plant. Let me see if I can pop them out of the pot here. Okay. Woo! Now I'm going to make a mess. So you can see the roots right there. The roots right there, those guys there, not only do they anchor a plant in, the roots actually get moisture for the plant. The roots as well allow that plant to breathe, and the roots also help it get some fertilizer. So roots, making sure that we have good and the appropriate soil. So this type of soil that you have right now is a seed starting soil. And what makes that soil, you can see the little white little dots that are in there, that's perlite. So that helps drain some water out. You can see the lighter colors in that soil as well, the lighter browns, that's peat moss, loams. That's actually trees that have been broken down over years and sometimes centuries. And that's what creates the loam. And then within the seed starting soil as well, you have a little bit of organic matter, which is best described as compost. So this soil, what makes it so fantastic is it has the ability, number one, to absorb moisture like a sponge, but then to dry out because it won't sit too wet too long. If a plant sat too wet for too long, and even a seed sits too wet for too long, what happens is we start to get what's called root rot. So now that you got your seeds in, and you can actually just take the seed pack and start to shake down and put some seeds in your hand. And you're going to see with the marigold seed is a really cool.
Just a heads up, Frank. Some folks have sunflower seeds. Just
sunflowers or marigolds. It's totally perfect. They're both fantastic overall. So we can see, and the neat thing about sunflowers, the reason why we did that mix as well for sunflowers is the neat thing about a sunflower is later on, because I do weather, I want you to watch the sunflower because the sunflower will have its when it's in bloom, it'll be facing the east in the morning. And then if you look at night, it's facing the west. Because during the day, that flower actually spins where the sun goes. And that's why they call a sunflower, because it tracks and follows the light. Totally cool. Plants are the coolest things in the world. So you're going to take your seed and we're going to do the egg carton. I'm going to do the egg carton, but you guys can choose to do whatever you want. So either the tray or the egg carton. And we're going to take 2 seeds and we're going to put 2 seeds per little kind of unit, like a little egg area. So we're going to put 2 seeds per unit. And if you're asking, why do we put 2 instead of 1? You should always put 2 seeds because sometimes 1 seed just doesn't grow. So we put 2 in, and that way, in case 1 doesn't grow, then we got another one in behind it. So then what we're going to do is once they germinate, sometimes we're going to have to pull that other plant out and we'll have to sacrifice it. Or what we can do is we can pull it out and we can then replant it, transplant it over. So we're going to put 2 per cell. And that's what those are called. If you're doing the tray, those are called little cells. The tray that you guys have, you may not have enough seeds of that one variety for that tray because there are a total of, in the cells, there's a total of 48 cells. So if you count, there's 4 per little pack and there's 12 packs. So there's 48 that are there. So we put 2 in. And with the soil depth, you're really not, this is really important. All you're doing is just putting that seed just below the soil, like not too deep at all. We just want just to go below the soil. So we're going to put a couple in there. So what we'll do after this, and we won't deal with water now. I want you guys, after we're all done today, to water everything. Well, what we're going to do after is we're going to give them a nice watering, and we don't necessarily need to put them in a bright space right yet because they really don't need any light until they germinate. So I want you to put them in the warmest room of your house or where you guys have some space. And when they germinate, and as soon as you start to see them germinate and you start to see 3 leaves, that's when we need to put them in front of a nice bright window. So either a west or south facing room is ideal. So we're going to put this. A little word of warning though as well, guys, with the egg cartons is that when you go to water them and they become wet, what happens is the egg carton becomes really kind of weak. It's only easy to move when it's dry. So don't try moving your little egg carton around when it's wet because it'll actually break apart. So we don't want to do that. So that's where we're going to seed some of your sunflowers, and then you're going to seed as well your marigolds. Next up, we're going to let people kind of have a little bit of time there as well. Seed starting is fun because what we can do is we can follow it, and we can write down on the calendar today, March 25th is when we sowed the seed. And I want you later on, you guys can email me through Rakesh or even just email me, Frankie at Frankie Flowers. I want you to email me or let me know when your seed emerged. And better yet, if you guys take some pictures of your seeds popping up, I can actually even throw it on BT during the weather. So it'd be neat for you to tell me that, hey, 7 days later, my seeds start to poke their heads out. And with the marigolds and with the sunflowers, within 7 to 10 days, so by next Wednesday to Saturday of next week, you should start to be able to see some of those guys that are going to pop their way out. So next up, we're gonna, if you guys have some of the clamshells, which I call them, or the salad or the fruit little things that you're gonna do. Next up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our lettuce, and we're gonna do our lettuce in these. And the reason why we're gonna do our lettuce in these is we're not gonna grow the lettuce all the way till it's big and harvest. We're just gonna grow the lettuce in this so that we're almost gonna have it as sprouts. And then they're gonna grow a little bit taller up, and then you guys are just gonna cut the top off, and then you're gonna be able to put it into a sandwich. With the lettuce, what we do, which is a little bit different, is we can either put the lettuce seed, and there you can see that the lettuce are much, much smaller seeds than the marigolds and sunflowers. And if there's any teachers that are on here today, I usually like to use marigolds, sunflowers, and beans for smaller children because they're a bigger seed and they're a lot easier to handle. So you can do a couple things. You can either put it in your hand, or what you can do is you can actually take the seed pack, and with the seed pack, we can just kind of bend it a little bit, and then we can just shake the seeds and broadcast them just all over the surface of the little clamshell that you have there. So you're just gonna broadcast those all over. Boom, boom, boom. Then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna take your hands and gently, just firmly press down. That's all you need to do for putting the seed in. Just gently, firmly press down. Okay? After we're done watering, this is what's a little bit different when we're using these. After we're done watering, we're gonna close the top. So after we're done today, I want you to water, and then what I want you to do is to close the lid on these. The reason why we close the lid on these, and that's why I love these, and these are so great, is that now what we do is we create what's called the greenhouse effect. This is like creating a mini greenhouse with this little tray. So by doing that and we water, what'll happen is on a warmer day is the water will evaporate and hit the top of this and create this amazing humidity in here. Just amazing humidity that the seeds will germinate faster. If you want to do a test, if you do some of the lettuce seeds in this container and then put some of the lettuce seeds in the open tray that you have and see which ones germinate faster and grow faster. So the key is as soon as we start to see this almost like a little bit of a green carpet, as soon as you see that in about 14 days from now, a couple weeks from now, that's when we're going to open up the lid because we can't keep the lid on there the whole time. If we kept the lid on the whole time, what'll happen is they'll start to rot out. So then we're going to open up the lid and we're going to let them grow so that they're just above. So they're a little bit taller. So they're going to be about 4 to 6 inches above. And then at that time, you're going to cut away. And I'm thinking with this here that you should be able to cut and harvest your own lettuce. So we're March 25th, probably about the 15th of April. You could be creating your own little lettuce. And for the extra, you could do a whole bunch of these and you can then enjoy those on your salads that are overall.
Frank, we've had a little request for any close-ups, if possible, of your work. Yeah, if possible. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can go. So what we can see there, guys, and my camera is just kind of readjusting there. So you can just see all what I'm doing is when I'm pushing the seed, I just push the seed just down, just like that. Just like that. Then we're going to be closing the lid after. So we're going to, after we're done with the session here, even it's a warm night, just so that you have a whole bunch of stuff spilling all over yourself, what I would recommend is for you guys to take this outside and to water them all outside. And then we're going to bring them in right after you water. But after you're done watering them, you're going to close that up just like that. So we can do the lettuce like that. Now, let's talk tomatoes. So tomatoes. There are so many different tomatoes. Tomatoes are the number one, the numero uno edible plant grown in the world. Everybody across the world are amazed by the tomato that originates. It's actually, many people argue where it originates from, but it's from the Aztecs in Mexico, where it originates from. Tomatoes, if we look at different tomatoes when you're buying them, and this is for the parents out there, but the kids should know this too, you're going to see there's two different types. There's what's called indeterminate and determinate tomatoes. And that means a vine type tomato that can grow 6 feet tall and is massive and huge, or a dwarf or bush variety of tomato that's a lot more smaller and more manageable. So If you have an indeterminate tomato, which is a vine type, you're going to need to build a support system for it. If you have a dwarf variety, you don't need to do that. I already have a pack of seeds that are open over here, which are, these are just some cherries that I have. Let's see how many seeds that I got in here. And we're going to go to the cell packs for this. If you have space in your cell packs, but you can also put these in your clamshells as well. But I'm just going to move this down. Boom. I'm going to move my cell over like that. So same thing, just very similar to the, I don't know if I have any seeds left in this one. I already sold this. Yeah, I'm going to go open this pack. Same thing like we did with the marigolds. We want to put 2 to 3 seeds per cell. So 2 to 3 seeds per little section. And these guys here take a lot longer to germinate. So that's why we need to plant them a little bit earlier than other things. So for instance, I have some beans here. And if you're thinking about growing beans, beans don't really need to be started at your home until almost the middle of April. So we're going to put some seeds, so tomato seeds. And just let you know, if you have a favorite tomato, you can actually harvest the seeds of your favorite tomato as well, and then dry them, and then put them in a little bit of an envelope. This is after the summer season, and you can then use those same seeds. So there are some, my grandfather who has passed away, we still grow the same seeds that he brought over, smuggled over from Italy, several years ago. And every year we grow these in the greenhouse. They're fantastic, very flavorful. And then what we do is we take the tomatoes, and then we basically let the tomatoes ripen so they're almost overly ripe. And then we remove the seeds out of the pulp. We just then put the seeds out in the sun just to dry. And then we'll put them in paper envelopes, and then we start them next year. So once again, you're going to do 3 seeds. So we're just going to do 3 seeds, and we're just going to put them right on the surface. And we don't even need to space them out too much. And then all you're going to do is, actually, I'll show you. Well, I'm just going to show you with my finger. I'm just going to push my finger down. So you just push your finger down just till you see the soil is covered up, and then just push a little bit of soil over. That's it. So you're going to do 3 seeds per cell, 2 to 3. You can get away with 2 if you want. And the reason why we always do that, we'll do that in the greenhouse too, is because this is just a lot of the times one will germinate, one will not germinate. So we're making sure that we're getting good germination that's happening here. So that's what we call in the greenhouse business a buffer. So I should also mention, before you plant all these, so stop. I should also mention that tomatoes, one tomato plant, if it's growing healthy, will take a 4x4 area of space. It should create enough tomatoes for a family of 4. So if you're doing some tomatoes here and you're doing a tray of tomatoes, you may have to donate some tomatoes to some of your family and friends that are out there, because you will not need, unless you have a massive property and you have a massive vegetable garden, you will not need that many tomatoes. Tomatoes are an amazing plant because what's neat about them is that in order for them to be successful, they need to pollinate. So once they get to bloom, they need things like bees and butterflies and other insects that will come to each and every flower to pollinate that flower. If you have a tomato plant, and you had a tomato plant in the past that had wonderful flowers, but you had no fruit, it means the fruit didn't set. Sometimes it's because we don't have enough bees in that area. So bees are key, and you guys will hear a lot about why we want to save our bees, and even different wasps as well will help out. And even there are different types of bees that are pollinating insects as well that we want to have. So that's a little bit right there, guys. So some seed sowing and some seed sowing projects. So now we've sowed our seeds. Okay, there's a couple things that may be happening that I want you to watch out for. So if we notice that once these are germinating and they're getting really tall and they're getting really looking weak and they're stretching like one way, sometimes it's a good idea, first off, every once in a while to turn your tray. The reason why you turn your tray is so it's going to get even light and they don't just always grow towards the window. If they grow tall and they grow leggy and they're really kind of thin and weak, I want you to cut back on the water, and I actually want you to cool down the area that they're in if you can. What we'll need to do is once we start to get to warmer temperatures and we're going to be planting them out in the garden, with tomato plants, for instance, we need to actually pop them outdoors for an afternoon and then bring them back inside. We need to do what's called hardening off. There's a little bit more work that's involved. We also need them to get adjusted to light levels, because it's like if we go outside and let's say that we just went on vacation, and let's say that you went on a 2-week vacation and you went to a wonderful warm spot. Do you guys remember when we used to go on vacation? So when we used to go on vacation, we go to a wonderful warm spot. Do you remember what it was like when you got out of the airplane and you got out of the airport and then all of a sudden that cold just hit you? It's the same thing with the plants. Plants being inside, we got to get them adjusted. So we got to put them outside for a period of time. Once they're hardened off, we plant them in the garden. The next key about having a successful garden, because it's in sun and we got great soil, is then what we have to do is think about water. And with watering, what I really would recommend for people out there is to make sure that you water in the morning. By watering in the morning, what we're doing is we're really reducing the amount of disease that'll happen in a vegetable garden, any garden for that matter. Because if we were to water at night, they sit wet through the entire night. And that's where we can get higher disease, we get more disease, and we'll increase the population of slugs. So water in the morning. Then the other consideration is you can use organic fertilizers. So we can use fish emulsion fertilizers. Even if before you plant your vegetable garden, if you want to use sheep manure. So kids, this is the cycle of life. You know, if we think about sheep and cows, they eat plants and then all of a sudden they go to the bathroom. On the back end of when they go to the bathroom, that composted cow manure, we need it to sit for a period of time, or sheep manure. And then what that becomes is very nutrient rich fertilizer, food. So we can then mix that into our garden, and that becomes a wonderful way for us to continue that cycle that goes all the way through. You can also get a liquid fertilizer. This is a liquid fertilizer that's all purpose that we can then mix in a watering can, and we could water our vegetables with that as well. But fertilizing will increase the yield, will make them a little bit healthier, but really making sure that you have really good, healthy soil is the key. That's overall.
Right.
What happens? Yep.
Sorry, a question came up in the chat.
Yeah.
What kind of soil do you use for the ground? Like, is there a suggestion?
Yeah, so what we want to use is we want to use for the ground, we want to use what's generally called a triple mix or 3-in-1 mix. So you can get that in bag form. You can also get it in bulk. So if you have a larger space, you can get it in even the big bags. You know, there's the big bags and then there's truckloads that you can get. But we want to get a 3-in-1 mix, which is generally manure, and then it has topsoil, and then it has a little bit of a sandy loam in. So then you're getting it all in one. So we want to get we just don't want to get topsoil. We really, and there's different, based upon different companies that are selling bulk soil, they will tell you some different marketing names, but you want to make sure that soil has some sort of compost and manure in there. And some of them will have mushroom compost, which is fantastic. Some, if they have worm castings, boom, worm castings are amazing. Horse manure, sheep manure. The key is that with that, you also want to make sure and look at some of the reviews for some of the bulk companies, because we want to ensure that it has been screened and shredded and there's not a lot of weed seeds. Because if you don't, sometimes when you get cheap soil, you get a lot of weed seeds and it becomes more work that's there. There are some different bag soils that you see that are formulated that will say for vegetable gardens or for raised containers, like Scott's has one, which is a Nature's Care. And if you look at it, it actually has, you'll see there's 3 numbers. And that's the thing about fertilizer. So in fertilizer, you can't really see it right there, but in the bottom right there, there's 3 numbers. And those numbers are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And really, if you're wondering what that is, the first number is for green or for growth. The middle numbers is for flowers and or roots, the base, and the end numbers for general health of the plant. So the easiest way to remember fertilizer is up, down, all around. So in spring for your lawn, you want to get it to grow lots of green. So you want to take care of the top. That's why you usually have a high first number. So there's a little bit about soil that's out there. Harvesting is the next thing. It depends on the crop. There's some different crops. If you guys are going to be growing cauliflower, there's something that I need to give you a little bit of tip about cauliflower. And kids, sometimes they love cauliflower, and cauliflower crusted pizzas and things have been very popular. In order for that cauliflower head to be white, what you need to do is once we start to see the flower, because it looks like a flower, we start to see it forming, we need to take the leaves of the cauliflower and we need to bundle them up and then tie them with an elastic so that we cover it up. By blocking out the sun and covering that head up, that's what keeps it white. If we were to leave those leaves down and just let it grow, it'd be yellow, it'd be bitter, it wouldn't work out. And I'll tell you, as a kid, we used to grow cauliflower and broccoli, my family business, and romaine lettuce. And as a kid, I used to always have elastics in my pocket because that was my job. I'd be out in the field tying cauliflower all day, all day. Little did I know that I'd still be talking about cauliflower to this day. But a couple other things too. If you guys are thinking about, let's talk about beans. Beans are fantastic. So there are pole beans that grow really tall, and then there's bush beans. Bush beans are easier because they don't grow as tall, but the benefit of a pole bean is if you don't have a lot of space, let's say that we don't have a lot of big area, by growing up, what happens is then we don't take a lot of square footage on the bottom. So sometimes we can actually grow more if we have less space. We can grow higher up. That's when there's a benefit of a pole bean. And I'll tell you a wonderful, wonderful little story about called the Three Wise Sisters, which is a demonstration of companion planting. And companion planting means when we're planting plants together that really help each other. So an example of that is planting basil beside a tomato plant. It repels aphids, and some people feel it improves the flavor of a tomato, even though there's no science to that. But an Aboriginal indigenous planting technique, which is called the Three Wise Sisters, is where we plant corn. So we plant corn, and then beside it, we plant a pole bean, and the pole bean grows up the corn. So the corn is really its support. So that's how the bean grows up. And then underneath, we grow squash. So the neat thing about that is the pole bean is growing up the corn. The squash is then shading the base, so making sure that everything's kept cool. And the other part about a bean is once a bean is growing, it actually puts nitrogen naturally back into the soil. So that bean is fertilizing the corn, fertilizing the squash, and then everything's supporting each other. So it's called the Three Wise Sisters. And it's a wonderful example of companion planting. And it's a wonderful example of when we put things together, how things can actually help each other. And that's the whole thing about, life as it is. I always say there's lots of lessons in the garden about life, and that sometimes we need people around us like friends to support each other. And we got to look at their strengths to help us out. So the corn's tall, so that can help the bean. The bean actually will then put nitrogen in the soil that helps the corn and then helps the squash. And the squash will then grow around the base, and that will shade everybody out. So it's a really great lesson to show kids, and a great lesson for us as humans and as parents to know about working together overall.
Another
and
question
finally,
here, Frank.
Yep.
Sorry, just a clarification. Do you water the tomato seeds in the morning once, or did you say twice, morning and evening?
No, just once. So we're only watering once, depending upon the type of day. So for instance, with these being in containers and these troughs, if they're outside and it's a windy day and we have lots of sun, you may need to water twice in that day. But generally it's no more than once a day. But let's just say, and I have to be corrected on that as well, is that over the next several days, we're going to have a lot of cloud cover. So we may be watering them today, and because we don't have a lot of light, we may not need to water them for another 2 to 3 days. Best thing to always do is to make sure that you just take your fingers, and kids, if you feel the soil, right now, feel the soil. You guys can feel it feels dry. It's fluffy, it's light, it's just dry. But later on, when it becomes moist, I want you to feel it again. So after you water it tonight, I want you to feel the soil again. Before you water, if that soil feels like it's moist and you can feel moisture within, don't water. We only want to water it when it's dry. With the seedlings, the other thing that's a really neat tip that you can do to maintain moisture in them and keep them fairly moist so that we can maintain humidity is, even if you wanted to take a piece of newspaper and just moisten that newspaper and just lay it over the top until the seeds till you start seeing green. That'll actually help improve the germination and actually help them germinate a little quicker as well. But yeah, and I was just going to say, finally, at the end of the season, what we need to do is clean up our garden spaces, and then we have to consider ourselves about, do we put fertilizer in the fall? So we can actually, what I would do in the fall for fertilizer is I would lay down some bags of cow manure or sheep manure. I tend to like sheep manure better. And then the frost and thaws of winter will help work that back into the soil. What farmers do is often what they'll do is what's called winter wheat. And winter wheat is a crop that they sow. And the reason why they sow that crop is not to harvest, it's so they can plow it into the field. So turn it back into the field in the spring to add nutrient back in. The other reason why farmers do winter wheat is it also allows the soil to be almost matted together by the growth of those plants, because they then don't allow on windy days for evaporation to happen and for the soil to blow around. So those are just a